Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Carver Project Conversation here tonight. My name is Tim Ziegler, and I'm the site pastor here at McCausland, which is part of the gathering. And let me first say, with regrets, that our senior pastor, our lead pastor, Matt Miofsky, could not be with us here tonight. He is at General Conference in North Carolina on official church business. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, that's okay. You're not really missing much, but that's what he's up to tonight. But he wanted to let me know how much he enjoys this night, and I get to fill in for him this evening in his stead. This is the gathering. This is part of the gathering. We have 3 sites around St. Louis, in Clayton and Webster Groves and here. So if you're searching for a faith community, we would love to welcome you on any Sunday morning. Check us out at gatheringnow.org and show up to any of our sites where you will be welcomed exactly as you are. If you have any questions this evening, look for the folks in orange shirts. Look for the people wearing the Carver Project t-shirts or anybody with these badges as well, and we will be happy to address whatever questions are on your heart this evening as we all prepare for a wonderful time. And with that being said, let us pray, please. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for this opportunity to be here in this space, here in this dry space. And we remember to you all of those persons who are on the road or who are not otherwise as dry as we are. And we pray for your healing mercies, for you to be with them here tonight. Be with all of our speakers as we enjoy this time together to hear a little bit more about what's going on in the world and how it connects to our lives and the work of Jesus, in whose name we now pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Tim, and thank you all for being here tonight. This is a rainy night. It's a little wet. And so, we might still have some folks filtering in here as we go. One effect of the rain I've always felt is to create a slightly more intimate indoor space. And this is an intimate occasion tonight where we're going to be able to sit down and listen to some amazing people talk about the work that they do in terms of reaching people with a childlike faith. And so it's just a wonderful event to have. It's a wonderful event to have you all here. And I just want to say thanks, first of all, to Pastor Tim and to the gathering for hosting us. This is such a wonderful space to be in. They hosted us last year. They're hosting us again, and they just do such a wonderful job of it. Could we please thank them for hosting us here? There are so many volunteers who make this possible, but this is the only place I've seen volunteers holding multiple umbrellas and running out to cars. And that is like a new level. I've not seen that. That's incredible. I also want to thank, before we get started here tonight, I just want to thank Shelley Milligan, who's our managing director. She does so much to make possible what we do in the Carver Project, both on campus and off campus, and between the faculty group, the students, and the churches in the city. And it's just wonderful to have her leadership in all that we do. And finally, to all of the staff and support that we've got and all the volunteers, just thank you so much. We have some faculty with us tonight who are part of the Carver Project. Now, today is the last day of classes at WashU. So there may be a few folk who are at home having a drink instead of here. But if you're a Carver faculty member, could you just take a moment to stand up? Because it's wonderful to know who you are and that you're here. Thank you. So I think I failed to introduce myself. I'm Abram Van Ingen. Hi. I'm the executive director of the Carver Project. And what the Carver Project is a ministry whose mission is to empower Christian faculty and students to serve and connect university, church, and society. So basically, to put this in other terms, what we do is think about how we build community among Christian faculty to model what it means to be a Christian scholar and teacher for students, but also to take what we do at the university out into the city through the churches. And as much as possible, we try to find events, bring in speakers who are Christians, who the university itself wants to learn from and to acknowledge and honors, but who also then can go give us a talk equally well at a church, to a church, about what it is that they do and how it brings glory to God. That is what we are. That's what we try to do. We're trying to build these connections as much as possible. And events like this which feature a wonderful dialogue, uncommon community, engaging with all kinds of artists, illustrators, writers, but also musicians and scientists and all kinds of people. This is the kind of event we'd like to bring out into the city as much as possible for others. Wow, that rain is coming down. I am so thankful for new buildings that don't leak. This is a wonderful place to be. So one of the things that I also wanted to mention to you is that we have a few, if you can hear me, we have a few things that are available. So first of all, this is one of our church partners. It is now one of 13 church partners throughout the city. And one of the things that's always awed and amazed me about the Carver Project is its ability to bring together not just Christian faculty from different denominations and different groups, but also churches from different backgrounds and belief systems and denominations. What holds us together is the Apostles' Creed. That's the foundation. And within that, we allow any sort of ecumenical range. And so we've had multiple meetings now where 12 and 13 different churches from a wide range of spectrums of Christianity have gotten together in the same room to talk about what it means to be Christians in St. Louis and what these churches are doing in and for St. Louis. And I am just so honored to partner with those churches through the Carver Project. And this is one of those churches that has been with us from the beginning, supporting us from the beginning. So it's a vision of what the body of Christ can be. And it's a wonderful vision to live into and one that I hope to keep nurturing. One of the things that we offer to these church partners and to anyone is a series of Carver classrooms online. And we have a flyer out there if you want to check it out. But one of the things that 5 different faculty members have done is take what it is they do. So for example, I do poetry. And they teach an online digital class that's now available for free for you to use at your churches with small groups. And so we have one on art in the church. Hold on, let me show you what we've got. Real quick. We've got poetry in the church, science and leadership, linguistics, confident pluralism, and art in the church, led by WashU Christian faculty members for church small groups. So if your church is interested in any of these videos, there's a flyer out there, or just contact one of us and get to know us, and you can use these in your churches to examine any of those topics. Okay, I'm going on too long. You're not here to hear me. This event, the Carver Conversation, is our 6th of these big events where we bring together wonderful and incredible people to talk to you. And tonight, you're going to hear more of these wonderful people on the topic of childlike faith, the art of translating the gospel to all ages. There is a way to ask questions. It is on your program. It is a QR code. If you don't know how to use a QR code, find someone younger than you and ask them how it works. But basically, it involves your phone. And it allows you to ask a question on your phone. It will go up front, and it will be in the queue. And it could be asked on stage. You never know. It's very exciting. So the QR code is on your program, and that is a way to ask questions tonight. The other thing is that we'll have a reception afterwards. It's a great place to meet and mingle and find other people who are interested in similar things. Have a cookie. They're wonderful cookies. And hang out. And the last thing I'll say is these are writers. They sell books. Buy books. Buying books is just a wonderful way to support the world, I say as an author. And the novel neighbor who has done a lot of these events for us is out in the lobby selling these books. And they are just incredible books. So please, buy a book out in the reception. All right, tonight our moderator is my dear friend John Hendrix. And here's a bit about John Hendrix, in case you don't know who this incredible person is. He's a Carver faculty fellow. He's the Kenneth E. Hudson Professor of Art. He's the founding chair of the MFA in Illustration and Visual Culture program at the Sam Fox School of Design and Visual Arts at WashU. He's got a new book coming out this year in September called The Myth Makers. It's a graphic novel about J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's friendship. And he just recently, 2 weeks ago, won, I can't remember ever the title of it. The title doesn't matter. The point is, he won the Lifetime Achievement Award for an illustrator in education. It's like the big prize. And so I texted him immediately, said, you're not even 50. Like, where do you go from here? You just won the Lifetime Achievement. It's over. It's over. So I don't know what you do at this point, except for maybe just interview some awesome people on stage. So that's what he's going to do now. Please join me in welcoming John Hendrix.
Hello. Oh, wow. Hi, that's hot. Hi, we're glad to be here tonight. First of all, you might be wondering, where is Phil? Well, I'm sorry to say Phil's not with us today. We learned this morning he had an urgent family emergency. Everything's fine, but he needed to be with his family today. So pray for Phil. We're talking with him about returning sometime this fall. He was really sorry to not be here. So now that you're all disappointed, I'll introduce my guests. I am very glad to be here with my friends, Daniel Nayeri and Trillia Newbell, authors, really interesting people. I'm just excited to have a good conversation with them tonight. So, all right, we actually don't do this very often at Carver Conversation, but I'm going to read a Bible verse. Have you heard of the Bible? Mark 10, 13 through 16. People were bringing little children to Jesus to him, and place their hands on them, but the disciples rebuked them. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant. He said to them, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly, I tell you, anyone who does not receive the kingdom of God like a little child will never enter it." So now, the two of you, please explain what this means. No, actually, that is a kind of mysterious thing that Jesus said to us about children. And the conversation tonight, although these are writers and authors who write for children, we all do that. This is really more about this question of translation and how we communicate the gospel to different audiences. In fact, I think the core story of Christianity, whether or not you're writing for children or for adults, poses the same kinds of challenges. So let me start there. When you guys are writing, do you think of your audience differently if you're writing for children or adults? Trillia, how do you think about that? Do you think, I'm going to sit down and write my adult book about Jesus, or do you just start with ideas?
Yes. Absolutely. And every writer, you have your audience in mind. You have that person that you're writing to. So if I'm going to write a book for a child, I'm going to think of who that person is that I'm writing to. Or if I'm writing to adult women, I'm going to think about that person. Or, yeah, so the answer is, it feels so simple, but I don't know how I would write if I'm not thinking about the person, the audience that I'm writing to. So, yes.
Daniel, did you grow up wanting to write for children, or are you just like, I'm just a writer? Or
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, so when you say children, very quickly, I feel like I have to get pretty technical about it, right? Because there are some technical limitations that happen when you're talking about a board book, where you're at the 0 to 3 range, right? And then picture books, which are traditionally in that 3 to 7 range. And some of that is because those are both categories in which they're not even reading it just yet. They're having it read to them. And there is, of course, lots of child development elements there, just like vocabulary, things like that. So like, if we jump over into like the world I often inhabit, middle grade and YA, then the way I sort of prepare there is less limited by those kinds of things, and more thinking about the fact that, well, just that children are no less intelligent than adults, but they're far less informed. So a lot of what I'm going to be saying to them is going to be the first time they come across that idea. Certainly sometimes the first time they come across that word.
Right, the idea that you're not dumbing it down for kids.
Certainly not on like an emotionally intelligent level. Like their emotional lives are just as complex as ours, but they may not have the words for it, right? And so in some ways, some of that task is to be the person who introduces these thoughts to someone, help them to navigate and to label their world.
Trillia, how do you coach someone up when they're saying, "Hey, I've got a kid's book idea"? You know, what tips do you tell them about? Hey, here's how you write or think about what this audience needs to hear, specifically from the gospel story.
Oh, the gospel story. Well, like he said, I think you do start with, are we talking about a board book that's going to have 2 words on it? Or are we talking about a picture book that's 900 words? It's still significant. And so I would have, if someone asked, okay, I'm an acquisitions director, so I get this question a lot. People send me proposals, or they ask me if they want if I'm interested in their story. And I want to know a little bit more about their what have they done with children? Is this something that's a hobby? So that to me, I think is kind of something that I would have to start with. And
do you have to have children to write for children?
No. Sally Lloyd-Jones is a very good example.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
So is Beatrix Potter.
Yeah, we could name...
Sendak.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis.
Dr. Seuss.
Right.
There you go.
Okay, we did it.
We did it.
We did it.
We solved that problem. As
Marie
a matter of
Sendak.
fact, you don't have to have children to write to parents. I think you can be a child psychologist. There's credentials that you can have even if you don't have that thing. So anyways, that's another topic. But, well, it's the same topic. But anyway, but I think that's important for people, and maybe a little freeing for people who have imaginations and words that they want to share with children. And so that's where I would ask, okay, so what is it that you're trying to say? And can you explain it in a way that a child can understand? Can you take that word, and what's the definition of that word? That's likely where you need to start. So you can't just say the gospel as such. So what does the gospel mean? Can you give a child a picture of what it looks like? Does that make sense? So
yeah, well, I think that's what Jesus was actually saying in some form about talking about the conception of faith in a way. Like it has to be not less than, but there has to be a handle on it that is like clear and understandable.
Yeah, built from first principles.
Yeah.
Right, like so often we have these like layered definitions and connotations that we apply to things because we all speak in shorthand with each other because it saves time, we're adults. But when you're trying to express an idea to a young child, one of the first things you'll experience, of course, is why. And why, and why. Like, they're very good at this. And so very quickly you get to the bare metal of an idea of like, why that? Why? And very quickly you get to first definitions, first ideas, and that had better hold water. So, right, like you should be kind. Why? Well, because then other people will be nice to you. And it's like, is that why? Is that true? Why? And it's like, well, no, actually, no, sometimes you can be kind and then people still won't be nice to you. And you're like, okay, but why? And it's like, well, because that'll make you a good person. And it's like, well, why? And you're like, yeah, well, because fundamentally someone was first kind to you on a grander scale than the word kindness. Let's redefine kindness. And then you have to like go back. And and I think kids, right? And kids will not put up with that kind of shorthand. Even younger readers, not like little children, young readers will absolutely demand justification of your statements,
And yet, Jesus does say for us to have faith like a child. And I do think there is something about a child that believes. Like you give them a gift and they're like, oh, thank you for that gift. There's a innocence of some sort, even though we know, well, I won't get into theology.
It's a suspension. It's a suspension of disbelief in the best sort of way, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they will. Which should give us some encouragement that God is not, he's not afraid of our whys, So we can ask those questions, and because kids do, they ask, they want to know, they want to, and so I was thinking about a book I wrote, God's Very Good Idea, and I had to take the imago Dei, the image of God, and put it into one word, like you were trying to do with kindness, and I was like, how do you do that? I came up with the word reflect.
Oh.
But it was just this exercise of why would that, like what you were just doing. And the Lord gives language. And so anyways, I just think that there is something sweet about children, even in their whys, that I could see why Jesus would say, have faith like a child.
Yeah,
You're
and,
totally right.
and the problem is, as a picture book, you have 1,500, 1,800 words, which is a much harder task to write than if you had 5,000, right? You have to be extremely efficient and do the best work in that short window.
Yeah. No, I like that you sort of added to that idea, right? This thought that like they're the ultimate analyzers, skeptics in the sense that they demand us to answer why, but then also they will accept on first principles something that's inexpressible, right? So like they won't allow you not to express it, but they will allow you to say it's inexpressible. And I think about that sometimes. Look, my wife one time pulled one of her like great parenting moves out of her pocket. Like I'm the not as talented parent.
There's one in every family.
She's. Whew. And one time she pulled one of these jujitsu moves, and I was like, respect. I'm gonna keep that one. And it was my son. My son asked the question, and it was a fairly big question. It was a big thought, and he was like 4 or 5 years old. And she sort of said very kindly, like, you know, that's a really big thought, and I'm gonna tell you someday, but right now that's not for you to hold on to. And I just went, you can do that? You can. Because I had up until that point been like, well, let me tell you, suffering is like gonna happen. I know you're 5, but baby, it's coming. And she just kind of went, you know, that's an adult size idea, and you don't need to hold on to it right now. And he just went, and I watched his eyes. He just like calmly put it away. He just went, okay, and he accepted it on faith that that's gonna happen. And blew my mind, but I was really,
to that end, you let's maybe talk about memoir as a device for maybe talking about some of those bigger ideas. I mean, your book, Everything Said is Untrue, does that so beautifully. And you were talking earlier about how do you take complexity and make it fit the world of the reader's mind at the age that they're like ready for it. And you did something beautiful with that book. You mentioned it in the afterword about how initially you reframed the narrative of the story and it kind of unlocked it for you. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah. So I mean, I had initially written it. The story is pretty. If it were a movie, it might be rated R. Right? It's like there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of gruesomeness, and so I was writing it from an adult's perspective to adults, and yet it was kind of very like emotionless, and some of it was just because I had thought a lot about it as an adult, and adults kind of want to know about the like political background of things, and so I'd written a lot about like Iran and America and their dynamics, and it just wasn't working, and I had an editor friend say, why don't you write it from the place where it was most emotionally raw, which was when it was happening, right, when I was a young kid. And so I started to write it there, and there I kind of hit a different topic that I think we haven't touched, right? Because we've said, right now in some ways we've reacted to the thought of what are the guardrails we would lift when we work for children, right? Like we wouldn't dumb it down, right? We would do, and so one of the things I would say though that a guardrail I tend to keep very up at all times is that I'm very aware that I'm speaking to other people's kids.
Yes.
And that like, I have no sense of humor. If you want to walk up to my kid and just be like, "Hey, kid, let me talk to you about whatever," I would not have a sense of humor about this, and so I expect that others won't either. And so there was quite a lot of thought around being the opposite of what I hear sometimes in the memoir world, which is, in the memoir world, a common term you'll hear is, well, this book was really cathartic for me. It was my therapy. It was a place where I really got to put things down and work them out on the page. These are all very common, and you'll hear them. Boo those people if you hear them. I was kidding. Don't boo them. Don't. But in your heart, boo them. No, you can do that for adults. If you want to read somebody's diary, and that's fine, it's kind of raw and fun. But I think the idea of like, you're not allowed to have catharsis in front of other people's kids. That's not where you work it out. It should have been worked out already. And some of that is because there's a really nuanced distinction between helping a child build the tools to work their way through those kinds of things and giving them the burden of experiencing those kinds of things. And those
and your book does this amazing thing where it has all those serious moments, heartfelt emotions, and then there's like a ton of poop talk. Like it honestly, the way it moves between those things was worthy of all the awards that it won. So there is like reading it, it's like, oh, I know the audience that this is for. Like you're just luring them in to these harder things with great talk about how you use the bathroom in Iran.
Right. Well,
right.
thank you. Yeah. I'm here.
Brilliant.
Scatologically humorous.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's my bailiwick.
Trillia, have you ever had a book come in at Moody and someone says, hey, this is an adult book, but you think, no, this is a kid's book, or vice versa? Or do you make those kind of suggestions?
No. And it's all my answers are short.
Moving on. Great.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Well, it's because if they're writing for adults, it's typically, okay, here's what I have had. I have had a book that I have read that has been written, and I think, ooh, that could be a middle grade. That we could take that concept, that thought needs to be also written for the 8 to 12-year-old. That I have had, but I don't typically have a manuscript come in and I think this person needs to write for children because nothing about their bio typically screams children. They haven't done anything with them. So I tend not to look at, I look at the whole person and not just the manuscript itself.
I tell my students all the time, I do think middle grade is one of the things that is overlooked because people think picture book when writing for children, or they think YA, vampire romance or whatever. But, middle grade is such a wonderful category to write to, and it's kind of having a moment, at least in graphic novels. So.
Well, it's having a moment. We at Moody are very passionately pursuing a lot of fiction. We have so many fiction books coming out for middle grade that I'm so excited about, but also nonfiction, and I write nonfiction middle grade. And here's what I say. If a kid can learn algebra, they can read these and learn about the scriptures. That's specifically nonfiction. And so I want to make sure that we're not dumbing down, that we're giving kids what they, and challenging them to read and to think big thoughts and deeply about big theological concepts for the work that I do, specifically most of the time. But yeah, so I can typically see a manuscript and take it to the middle grade. Teens but I think a lot of teenagers read adult books, but anyways, definitely the middle grade. But not often a picture book. Yeah, just it's a different category and a different type of book. So,
well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say middle grade. I mean, to speak up for middle grade too. Yeah, I love it as well. And one of the reasons is it is quite literally their introduction to adulthood. This is the coming of age category, right? So, and I love the definition of coming of age as the moment a child turns his or her face to adulthood. And so in some ways you get to be that person who defines like, hey, just so you know, this is what maturity looks like in this moment for this character, for this, brief instance of time. And I think to do that, to give, by the time they're young adults, they've formed a lot of these ideas.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think it's a specifically important transitional kind of category. Yeah.
Well, and we're all writing books that, Moody is a Christian house. We typically work at houses that are secular, for lack of a better word. But I don't think we would ever tell a young person, all you should read are Christian works of literature, right? So how do you talk about reading broadly? Or like, what is... I think maybe the question I'm asking is, has the 20th, 21st century church made mistakes in the way that we talk about how to read broadly as a human being?
We're afraid. We are afraid of everything, as if the Lord isn't powerful and can't, I don't know. Anyways, and so I think that is one of the detriments, I think, to our current culture, is that we are so afraid that we don't educate or expose. With that said, of course, there's wisdom. You need wisdom, which I'm sure we'll talk about, because what John really wants to talk about is banned books. But
yeah. Oh, we're going there. Don't worry.
We're just getting there. But
I'm leading you off the plank of banned books. Yeah.
But I do think, so yes, I think we should be able to read broadly, but I also think that we then need to be engaged. And if we aren't going to, and I'm speaking maybe primarily to educators educators and teachers and youth leaders, if we're not going to then be willing to sit down with that child and talk about it, then I don't think we're operating responsibly. But I have, the only time I wish I would have, my daughter, she's so young, I think she was like 12, and we were at a library, and I want our kids to read broadly, so I'm like, pick up some books, read. And then I come around the corner, and she's reading The Color Purple. Yeah. And I was like, ooh, we gotta have a lot of conversations now. And so because I wasn't right there with her, I would have probably guided and guarded a little bit. You're a little young for, that beginning, which is terribly sad. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it. The Color Purple.
Oh, yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. It's so sad. And it starts out very rough. And so with that said, but I didn't act shocked or grab it, and I said, oh, let's talk about what you just read, because I was over here reading just let's talk about it. And we had that opportunity. So my point is that yes, we've made mistakes, but I don't think that, and we act like we're scared.
You would say err on the side of more books than less? No, or would you, if the response to people being afraid of the world?
Well, my is to educate. That's really what I'm like. Educate yourself, educate your children, read alongside of them, and don't be afraid. And so I'm not saying that there's a free for all. I think we've operated in fear, but I don't think that. So yeah, I would say read more books, read broadly. Yes. Yeah.
Well, and we were trying, but in the pregame, we were talking about banned books, and we were saying, well, I think we would all agree that there are certain subject matters that are not appropriate for certain ages, right? And almost immediately, Daniel said, well, the rest of the world doesn't really agree with that point of view, right? So how should we approach talking to young people or children, our own children, about, I saw this book was banned, can I read it? Or how do you speak with them intelligently and engage their curiosity? Daniel, tell us what the answer is.
Yeah, thanks for hitting me with that one. I try to use a heuristic because a lot of this is trying to negotiate with other parents and other people. It sounds like that's what we're up to. Because obviously with my kid, again, it's my kid. I'm not playing for do-overs with my kid. So on some level, and granted, I'm lucky we outnumber him. We've got one, so I don't have to keep up with too many. But the point is, I think when we're trying to negotiate how to do this as a group, as a community, the heuristic I try to pull out is, okay, let's think about censoriousness, right? Let's think about the idea of limiting access to an idea or a thought or a book. And now let's kind of put it on a range of who's attempting it. And let's make concentric circles, and kind of the individual, myself, I'll be in the middle, the individual will be in the middle, and then we'll sort of go outward until we get to the last phase of this circle, and that's the United States government. And I try to sort of find a common ground. I've so far, it feels like, I feel like I have, where I say, I think we can start at the very top and agree that the entity that has a monopoly on violence and can enforce its will by knocking your door down and putting you in a cage should have the most limited access to censorious behavior, right? We should just try to figure out how the government doesn't do that as much as possible. That we can agree with. And then you kind of keep going down until you get to the individual and say, I would like the individual to have maximum amounts of censoriousness for themselves. So another way to say that would be, I often find common ground with people who are look, I have a kid, we had a really horrible experience with his or her sibling, and so when the topic in school comes up of whatever it might be, whether self-harm or drug abuse, whatever it might be, they're allowed by the teacher to get up and leave and go to the library. They don't have to read that book. And to be very honest with you, I don't care. I think that's great. If they, for that family, decided that this young person is not going to engage with your hypothetical happy fun time thought process on this middle grade novel about self-harm, then that's fine. They don't need to have a sense of openness to that. They can be utterly closed to that, and I can respect that. So the individual gets maximum censorious access, the government gets none, and now I work my way outward until I say the family gets that they get to decide what comes into their house. And I want them to have all the tools to be able to do that. And then I want the library of the school and then the library of the community and move outward. And I want those entities to have the tools to be able to curate and manicure exactly what they need. And that does come with some buy-in. Because once you say those things, everyone agrees, okay, well, what can we do? Well, the teacher could talk to the parents and say, hey, this book's going to have some topics in it that are going to be hard. Okay, cool. Now we've preserved the young reader if he or she is going to have a content warning about that. Great. Okay, so then on some level, I find myself backing myself into some agreement with this idea of, hey, that'd be really nice if you volunteered what some of this content was. That'd be good. That'd be interesting information. Around here, we start to break down in some of my conversations with some of my friends because then they're like, oh, I don't want ratings. And you go, okay, we're gonna have to work our way through that. We're gonna have to figure out how to, because they don't want ratings put on the book. They don't want that to be an onus on the publisher, because they anticipate that people are gonna start trying to game that system, right? The classic example being with music in the 90s with the explicit warnings and how Walmart no longer picked those up, and then of course then it became a badge of honor in some musical genres, and you gotta have the explicit warning in order to be credible, and blah, blah, blah. We all see that the system can be gamed. But let's take a step back and go, okay, but then we still need to give parents the opportunity to maximally curate what their child is experiencing. And I just kind of go from there. That was too long for like this mathematical way of doing it. But fundamentally,
did everyone get that? I think we got it, yeah.
I also think it's happening. Just so you all know, my children go to a public school in Tennessee, and if they are reading something, or we will get an email and say, if you don't want to, you can opt out and you will not be penalized. And that's the key.
Right.
They cannot be penalized. And so that is happening. And if I find myself happy with that. As long as we know what and we can have a say in it, then I think that's healthy and good and appropriate.
So when I was coming of age in the church in the 90s, there was the phenomenon of the Christian bookstore, right? We all had those. People look at the books I've made now and say, wow, you must have always dreamed of making Christian books and doing a great work for God. And the fact is, no. Like, I did not want to be associated with anything that was in the Christian bookstore. And that wasn't theological. It was just the aesthetics were so bad. I just thought, surely there's not anything good in there. So in many ways, I'm shocked that I now make books about literal Jesus. I feel like I spent so many years telling people you could be a Christian artist and not have Jesus in your work, and now I draw literal Jesus. But I think actually in today's publishing landscape, that has really changed. Like, I think there is a lot of really amazing work being made at a bunch of different, like Crossway, Moody, like there's so many, Rabbit Room. There is great art being made and people writing, but I mean, your memoir is about Christianity.
Yeah.
And yet it got all the flowers in the secular world, right? Like, what has been the reaction to your memoir in that way? Do people not even read it that way, or?
Well, I think everyone, one of the phrases, I mean, not to like, this will sound self-aggrandizing. Let's just assume it doesn't. Let's just go with that. No, I mean, one of the things I really enjoy is this line that one of my writing professors once said, which was that only shallow waters run one direction. And this idea that deep water always has eddies, and undercurrents and undertows, and as a result, you are capable of misreading that water, quite literally, and of course I think of great texts and like the Bible as such deep water that it is often misread, right? Like people misread that one a whole lot, and so. So I think that when someone says like, how do people read your novel, I'm tickled when there's a whole lot of different reads on it. You know what I mean? And some of them, of course, I don't agree with necessarily, or some of them, to me, that's like a sign of like, ooh, did I manage to achieve deep water? And if I did, then I'm great. But like a poster that says "Eat here now," that's shallow water, and it's about like you should eat here now. Like there's no like there's no miscommunication.
That's
there.
your next novel
That's the
title is "Eat Here Now."
I've always. One of the questions.
Baby shoes, eat here now, never worn.
Eat here now? Question mark. Now we're getting somewhere. One of the questions, I think the challenge for me is like, the history of publishing is such that most of everything we're describing as categories are kind of made up. They're like marketing teams made up YA. And then they sort of got together and bookstores gave them a section. And I mean, other sections have been attempted, right? Like new adult keeps getting attempted. Like, so these things they're not boundaries in the objective sense to me. And to be honest, neither is the notion of Christian publishing versus like whatever you want to call it, regular publishing. There are some distinctions that are like specific. So for example, Christian bookstores of the 90s wouldn't have been able to carry your book, not because your book isn't Christian, in fact, even if it was, but because other books in that catalog weren't, and they distinguished by catalog, right? And so you were at a house that would have had other things. That kind of mechanism, to me, is very, very human, very irrelevant to the notion of what literature even is. Another simpler way for me to say it is I think I've seen great Christian work coming out of publishers, non-Christian publishers, and I've seen work I would consider deeply un-Christian coming out of Christian publishers. So like deeply.
Wait, I got Trillia. Tell us, what do you think about that?
I have a list.
You nodded your head so vigorously.
No.
Name names.
But yeah. I suppose what I mean to say when I like the idea of just even curating based on, well, here's this section and here's this section, it's a nonsensical idea, because go back 100 years and the Tolkien estate is at a non-Christian publisher. The Lewis estate is at a non-Christian publisher. These are all like, these things get moved around, and of course as conglomerates buy each other, they're all getting, they're not even, it's an entity that has no recognition from my perspective on that.
Do you think Moody's publishing much more broadly than they have before, or?
Well, it depends on what you mean. By broad, probably broadly in the sense that we probably touch more denominations, but not broadly in the sense that we are publishing non-Christian works. They don't have to be. There are parts of our publishing house that aren't explicitly Christian. The 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman, is not explicitly Christian. If you read it, and it's talking about crossing, I mean, it's everywhere. The Kardashians have talked about the love language. Sure. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's a meme. Like, board games are my love language.
Exactly. Yeah, it's everywhere. But he's a pastor, and he's a faithful pastor, and he's an honorable guy. And this man has written this book that's sold like gazillions copies. That's crossing every. I mean, it's just bizarre. We're all like, okay. It's just interesting. So yeah, I don't know what you mean by broad, but we're not publishing non-Christian work. Now, if someone had an idea and it wasn't, you don't have to have a scripture on every page or something like that. You can publish creatively and from the heart, and stories that teach or things like that without it being explicit. So So if that's what you mean, then yes. And a lot of publishers are doing that more and more.
Yeah. What do you think about why aren't Christians funny? Have you thought about
dare
that?
you.
People have laughed so much here.
How dare you?
Well, okay, so when you write for kids, typically people think you're going to be writing comedy on some level, maybe, right? Or anyway,
I have not written comedy.
I think okay, comedy is too big, but like I feel like evangelicalism specifically is terrified of things being funny for some reason.
Okay, can I counter? And I'm going to disagree with you.
Do it.
Yeah, get him. Get him.
Get him. One of the critiques of my books has been that they're sad.
What?
They need to be
Funny.
more funny.
They need to be, because I talk about sin. And they're like, it's, why would you tell a kid that they did something wrong? I'm like, and so I get that is a critique that I've gotten, is that, and so interestingly, it may be that people, but even in our, it's so that's interesting, because I have had the opposite shared with me, is that I don't, like there's a, in two of my pictures, one of them, it goes like dark gray, and it's just, they're like, that's a terrible page. and so so I think that's really interesting. Or I wrote about a kid who lost a friend, and they said, well, it took a long time for that kid to get the friend. And that was a critique. It was like, couldn't the friend come a little sooner? I was like, but that's not life. Life is hard, and sometimes it takes a long time. But anyways, do you think I don't know.
Well, it's so funny. I'm sitting here trying to think, because I see
exactly. Who do you have in your mind as the Christian hero of humor?
Well, I think so. Right now, actually, it's funny you say that. But I hear the point that you're making. I think I'm going to take on the expression of it. But I do think there's a lot of exceptional examples right now, right? Like in comedy, there's a lot of people who've expressed that they're from that background. Now, I don't know where they're at now, but they're probably not practicing Christians or whatever. So on some level, we should ask, why are comedians so bad at being Christian? But this is my first problem. But I got a list. I got other problems. I think to take on and work with that idea, I think it's more, I think what you might be putting your finger on is laughter, like celebration, is riotous, and riotousness, and there's almost this thing that happens, this like magical frisson that happens in the room when everybody is becoming joyful, and maybe people are dancing, or maybe people are laughing, and like now anything can happen. Like we're starting to bounce off those walls a little bit socially, and things can get a little bit like beyond. And I think that you can find that person in any sort of traditional whatever background who might start to get very trembly and nervous if people are getting a little too riotous. And okay, I can understand that, but I do think there's a long tradition, and even now I think it's like that like 1980s humorless Tipper Gore, like let's put everything, that kind of thing is less the mainstay, right?
Can I just say, I also think it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to write.
It's really hard. Yeah.
And that probably, if we were to just get technical, that probably is why you don't see a lot of humor on the page. It's easier to be humorous in the spoken word or in a video or, whatever. But on the page, it takes skill. And that could very well be also the reason, not that Christians hate humor, but that it takes a skilled writer to write in a way that's humorous.
Yeah, and I mean, to talk about VeggieTales, while Phil's not here, but like there is a level of absurdity in VeggieTales that is, the non sequitur part of it is so kind of radical, right? And that's part of why I think it was such an iconoclast when it came out. If you could call VeggieTales iconoclast, I think you can. Yeah. But
what's funny is when you think about humor and break it down, like you're right, absurdity tends to be more comfortable in like faith-oriented spaces because commentary is mechanically transgressive, right? So like to make commentary is often where you hear that commentary humor is often what gets called like punching down or punching up, or it kind of very clearly has a butt, like meaning this person becomes the butt of the joke. And that starts to grate against a community that is very like kindness oriented and nice.
And I think what I was getting at too is like we think I need to make a piece of art for a child. I'm going to interpret this, and this is like precious content, especially around Christian themes. And like I need to handle it with care. I need to deliver it so that I do not break this beautiful Fabergé egg. And so there's sort of a fear of like having a little too much fun with what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it may be just a version of kind of being fearful about storytelling.
Or unskilled.
See, this is why you have an editor up here who's like, I have read all the bad manuscripts.
It may be fear. And there is a sense of, this is if I'm handling the gospel, I want to get it right? But I do wonder if we could, I'll say it this way. You see comedy a little bit more in as they get older. So I'll see works of humor for the teen.
Yeah.
But I just don't see it as much for like the picture book. You see fun, you see joy, but not humor, and that's a different thing, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, so we have absurdity as a category, and that might get dangerous because people are getting itis and having too much fun. We have commentary, which might have a butt of a joke, and it might be unkind. And then we have one other nature of comedy, which is surprise, right? And surprise is, of course, like a basic constituent part of a joke, but when you're speaking to young kids, and if you're holding on, as you said, to the message as though it's a Fabergé egg, those are contradictory impulses, because one is, we know what we want you to know, and here it is. And a surprise is, there's something unknown, and it's going to surprise you, right? Those are just contradictory mathematical like forces, right? And so on some level, there is this like, suspicion of surprise and the unknown, and even just like a playful banter toward the something that we don't yet, because you want to say, if you're holding on this way, no. Don't question it. We know. These are the things we know, and here it is. And that would be, I guess, the posterized version of a picture book for kids.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have some questions from the audience. Are we ready?
Are they color coded by difficulty or spiciness? Or?
What are your books that you would tell us to read? Like, do you have things where you say, you need to, besides your own works, of course, what books should we be reading? Do you have a good recommendation?
To just like general adult audiences?
Yeah. It does not say.
Doesn't say. Brother, okay. You go first.
Of all of human literature.
Of all of human. Yeah.
Name your favorite.
Yeah. It's an amazing storm. Golly, well, I guess I'm going to stay in my wheelhouse, which is kind of the middle grade space. But on the adult side, I would probably say other things. But when young readers ask, I often mention Thief by Megan Whalen Turner. I think it's just a phenomenal work. Maurice and his the amazing Maurice and his Educated Rodents. There's a great old Newbery winner from back in the day, and it's called A Door in the Wall. It's wonderful. It's set in the medieval era. It's about a young boy who gets an illness and loses the use of his legs and goes to a monastery and simply tries to make himself useful again. And he has just a really, it's a great little, middle grade novel. It's called A Door in the Wall because the metaphor is like, even if you're, walking through darkness, and there's, just keep walking. There'll eventually be a door in the wall. One of those metaphors always stuck with me. Yeah.
You got one? No?
Well, okay, so I'm going to speak to writers. I would encourage you to read On Writing Well And I love Stephen King's and Anne Lamont's writing memoirs. They're more memoirs, but they encourage you to write.
Bird by Bird.
Bird by Bird,
Yeah,
thank you.
so good.
Yeah. But this is so funny. Earlier they asked me, what's your favorite movie? And I was like, have I ever watched a movie? I just can't. I'm not good with questions like this.
We'll move on. If you think of one.
Okay.
What makes a story sticky? Like, what makes a story stay with someone in their mind? Like, do you plot? Do you know the division of pantser or a plotter? Like, do you write by the seat of your pants, or do you plot it out? Like, how do you think about making story?
Well,
Daniel will have a 5-point
I have a chart. No, how dare you? I'm not even going to answer that question. I don't think the second part has anything to do with the first part. Meaning, be a plotter, be a pantser. That's not going to be what makes it sticky. I think a game I play with my son it's called The One True Thing. Is that I tell him that no matter what cartoon, whatever he's watching, no matter like anything, it cannot be helped. Every piece of art has at least one claim to one true thing in it, and we'll kind of find it. So you could be watching some like goofy like punch 'em ups heroes just going like pow pow pew pew, and everything's going, and then at some point, usually around the climax, a character goes like, oh, but I know it was a real hard journey, but like we're friends, and friends means never having to say you're sorry, and you're just like, and I'll turn to my son and be like, that was their one true thing, like that's what they used it on, and it's just junk, like it's such a junk idea, and you go, that author every author at some point has to deliver something beyond. We got to go get the doodads for the Watsits people, and you got to say something like the whole time friendship was the journey, and I can't tell you how many times authors flub it, right? They just fumble this bag every time, and my son and I, like, I'll turn to him and be like, cool, so we just watched that, and the punch 'em ups was really fun, but kind of stupid, right? Like fundamentally not worth having it be sticky. And then there will be times where the whole thing is built at the climax. Some amazing moment will happen. Some character will do something or say something, and he'll be like, "Dad, that was amazing." Yeah, and you'll be like, "Yes, that was a true statement." It's so hard in art to say even just one true thing that is my heuristic. And if you can do two, baby, you're Shakespeare.
You're Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If I may.
Excuse me, I'm leading this.
You're like, why are you commenting while your son's trying to watch a movie?
Oh, no. But that's funny. No, but because I think in order for you to get to that one true thing, you can't write on something that's not from the heart. And so that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, gosh, what is that? What's the sticky thing? But it has to be that someone is writing something that they know, they experience, they love, that's from the heart. That's not just an assignment. And so I don't know. No. So I was just wondering if that has been your experience. I know for me, if someone says, will you write this thing? I usually say no, because if I can't write an assignment, or I used to be able to, I can't now, it's harder. I need to feel it. This sounds so subjective, but it is. And so...
No, I think you're completely right. And in fact, I think sincerity being a absolute requirement is accurate even to the things that we sometimes wouldn't see as sincere. Like if you see a big YA franchise, often it's really interesting. The really big successful ones, the author is actually quite sincerely in love with this thing that sometimes like the literati will make fun of. And then you actually see all the heartless and insincere, follow-ups. And those have no recognizable difference at all. But in fact, the one that started the phenomenon, you're like, this person cared about this, and you can sort of laugh because it's whatever. You don't think vampires are fun or interesting, but like fundamentally, I find myself respecting that sincerity. Or
they like live in the world,
yeah,
and they're dreaming and thinking about it.
I have a graphic novel coming out about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, so forgive me, but let me talk about them. Tolkien was obsessed with this idea. He coined this term, the eucatastrophe, and it's basically the reverse catastrophe. And it's the idea when you're reading a story when all hope is lost, everything is spent, there's no way the story can turn, and then suddenly you get the miraculous. He was so obsessed with it. It's all over Lord of the Rings, from the Eagles to Gandalf coming at Helm's Deep. Like that feeling he got from reading in stories, he wrote to get that feeling over and over again. And that's what drove his stories. And of course, the eucatastrophe to him, the text of the eucatastrophe is, of course, Easter. Like to him, that was the thing that inspired all great storytelling.
I've always loved that because it kind of recontextualizes a common, writers will always be like, well, I don't like Deus Ex Machina, which is a term used for sort of a sudden fix to your plot at the end. And I think it's really interesting that he was like, no, it's my favorite thing.
Yeah. No, he basically was like, I dare you to not feel something when that happens.
Yeah. Can I ask you this in your book? Did you, because it's about their friendships, were you tempted to make the narrative of your book have a eucatastrophe in it?
It does.
No.
Thank
Clever.
You asked the perfect question. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
No, tell us the twist.
It will make a lot of Lewis and Tolkien scholars probably very upset. But
oh yeah, George MacDonald wrote for both of them.
You'll just have to buy the book.
He goes through. I knew it. Chesterton did it.
Yep, that's it. Dorothy Sayers.
Conspiracy theory.
Okay, we've got a question here about, have you always written? Was there something about your upbringing that cultivated a love of the arts? How do you, if we've got parents that have got kids and they would love to encourage them, how do you instill that in your kids?
My dad wrote music. He actually opened for Kool and the Gang. Do y'all remember that?
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's a singer. Anyways, it doesn't matter. But it does. But to me. And so I grew up, he wrote poetry. He was just so cool to me. I can't write poetry at all. But, so you asked a couple of questions in that one question. So, yeah, I was exposed to it early. And so my children have now been exposed to it early. And my son, he does poetry slams, and he has a stack of writing poetry, and so it does. I think there's something you're getting expired or inspired, and so yeah, I was, but I've always been a researcher, which is why I enjoy nonfiction. I wrote for a paper. I was a freelance journalist for a city paper, and did feature stories. I love that. So that's where I went, and not so much in the poetry. And which makes sense for what I do now. However, I'd love to one day write a fiction book.
Did you grow up in we know your story if we've read the book, but
what's funny is I recently was speaking to a bunch of librarians, and I made sure to verify this because it sounds like such a tale of immigrant woe. But because when we came to this country, we didn't have any books. I didn't have any books at all. But the only thing I did have with me was this little booklet that came with the juice boxes in UAE of this little polar bear, and I had this booklet. I still have it. And so I brought it to this conference, and I was trying to think of having books. And I realized I only owned, by the time I got to the 5th grade, I owned a copy of The Hobbit, which is probably why I reread it all the time. It's good on its own as well. But
yeah, same.
But so as a result, I got here when I was in the 2nd grade, and we just went to the library constantly. The library, besides the public land and the concept of the national parks, I really do think the library is just America's greatest idea. And it's unbelievable. You go into these places and it's all just free of charge. I'm still a 3 days a week library person. It's where I get my books and movies and you can just request for them to show up, right? If you go around and you don't see what you like, you just go on a computer and boop boop boop, and it just shows up, and it's great. So we would go constantly. My first job I was as a librarian. I was a little kid who lived at the library, so it was. I realized also it might have been ad hoc babysitting. Because
Smart parents.
I was by myself. Yeah, so there you go.
Okay.
Just dump them there and leave. Go have a date night.
The poet Stephen Dunn says, "You can't teach disbelief to a child, only wonderful stories." So what would you say is the relationship between story and belief? Or what does that make you think of in your own work? Do you have an experience of that reading as a child?
Story and belief. I would have to unpack the word belief in this. Yeah. I would, you know what I mean? I don't do a lot of quotes like that one. I'll tell you why. Because I get really nervous.
I'm sorry, whoever wrote that.
Yeah. No. I don't mean to dog on it. I mean, I get really nervous when we describe things in unidirectionally. With the phrase, books save lives. And it's yeah, books totally saved my life, y'all. That, for me, an amazing power in my life. But anytime you describe power, you must be honest. And you must understand that power cuts both ways, right? A knife can be used to serve a meal or to cut you open. And it can always do both. Power can always do both. An idea can always destroy, and it can heal. And frankly, sometimes it just takes a word to do the destroying. So, it's easier to destroy. So on some level, I always keep that thought in my head when I'm thinking about books. Clearly they helped me greatly, but I would be nervous to say, books equal belief, or books deliver positive belief system, or even books deliver positive enterprise or outcome. I think there are plenty of people for whom that can have gone the other way, and this is why books are powerful, and why we must respect. This is why we have to respect even our interaction and conversation. Is we can I remember the people who said the things that harmed me the most, right? And books are the same. So how would you?
Yeah,
think
it's
of that?
interesting. We had the same
reaction.
We had the exact same. I was like, and I appreciate the quote. I just don't believe it. And so, no, I mean, really, I don't. And I think it's because I've seen the opposite. When one of my children was 4, I was explaining about God, and they said, "I don't believe you." And so I said, "Well, one day I'm going to just keep telling you and pray, and maybe one day you'll believe." And we said, "Okay." And I said, "Okay." And so I don't believe that children don't not believe. What say the?
Well,
yeah.
Does this go to to our previous conversation a little bit about parents that desperately want to deliver the beauty of the gospel story to their parents or their parents and their children, and they feel like maybe they're just afraid, to do it wrong, or maybe they just want a great system to be able to do it and get that guaranteed result, and that generates a fear of maybe something harming them in the world, or...
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, I will say this about that quote that I do believe. I think that's why a lot of picture books, or some picture books, sell. Because you're trying to find a story. How can I teach? How can I show my children this? So I do believe in that. If you're thinking, if that's the way we're going, that there is there's power in story, which is, to your point, to do good or bad, there's power in story, and so I don't know, but I don't think that black and white. So
well, and this always comes up with the New York Times bestseller list. It's a phenomenon of having something sell or be popular doesn't mean it's a great book, right? I mean, the New York Times bestseller list has 5 things on it that are terrible and 5 that are truly works of genius, right? So using the market as a way to determine if a book is great or not, that's not the best metric.
Well, I mean, yes, and using any of the bestseller lists because they're curated. Just so you know. And
what?
What? And so I know tons of people who write lots of stuff who've never hit those lists and sold lots of things. So faithfulness, if I were to speak to you as a writer, I would say be faithful in your gift. Keep writing, do it. But don't try to be on bestseller list. But anyways, so yeah, you're exactly right. You can have a bestseller or something that goes gangbusters and it not be helpful. But I guess my point is that people are looking. I think people are looking for those stories and a way to communicate.
I mean, and the Jesus Storybook Bible is an incredible work. I mean, it does the work you want it to do. It's beautifully illustrated. Like, it is the thing. It deserves that everyone reads it, right? So it's not like that if something is popular, that means it's bad, right?
Oh, 100%. Right. Yeah.
And beauty has an effect, right? Like, so if going back to your question of like how a parent who wants to share the beauty of something, full stop, cannot take a kid's face and be like, look at that thing, it's beautiful. Because again, you have to answer the why. And the why of beauty is so self-evident that just take them there. Show them the effect of that beauty in your life, right? Like, isn't this amazing?
Right.
Like, if
it's me trying to get my kids to watch The Three Amigos, right? They won't do it. No.
Just sit there and laugh uproariously, and they will ask you what you're laughing about.
Yes,
which is, and that's exactly the point. Is you experience or help them experience the effect of that, whatever that might be. And I think you've gotten at least one step further down their heuristic of like, they want to know, they're going to do what you do. And if you revel in the beauty of it, they'll come alongside you, I think.
Okay. Are you worried about attention spans in this digital age? How do we encourage children or adults to spend more time reading, the slow time that it takes to read? Tell us your 5-step plan to save our youth.
Yes, I got it. So if they want a cell phone, ask them if they would rather cocaine instead. And give them that. I'm sort of serious. Cell phones are a disaster, unmitigated in every way possible. Everybody knows it. It's going to run through that generation worse than any metaphor of cocaine you could possibly make. None of us don't know it. If you want safety for your child so that they can go on a Boy Scout trip and call you if they fall in a river, there's solutions for that do not put a supercomputer with demons in it right in their pockets. Every measure we have of damage to children is spiking. Like a hockey stick, like deaths of despair are spiking in 14-year-olds in ways we've never experienced before. And those body counts can be mapped directly to the years that the smartphone came out, that Instagram came out, and TikTok came out. And so to put it into your child's hands without incredible amounts of limiting mechanisms, man, I'd rather see you hit him on the bus.
Unless you're watching VeggieTales.
Huh?
Unless you have VeggieTales on the screen.
You hit me on exactly the thing that bothers me the most. So yeah, sorry about that. Do whatever you want. You're an adult. Like, none of what I said matters. I'll never show up to your house and judge you. And if you got it, and I suck at parenting, so don't. Sorry about the language. Don't. I just realized I got to backpedal because I think this all the time. Like, it makes me sad that we have like literal death counts related to stupid dance websites. And I, by the way, I have social media, so hypocrite. Don't listen to him. But I think you said attention spans. That got me going.
I'm sorry.
Save me, Trillia.
I should have known.
Be polite to these people, please.
Well, I mean, you just.
Okay. I have heard from librarians, especially in the past 10 years, that used to never shelve graphic novels because there was a sense of graphic novels are sort of candy, right? But that now librarians are embracing things with more images in them because reluctant readers are more likely to pick up a graphic novel than a full memoir, right? So, hire an illustrator. That's what I'm saying.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
That's actually what I was thinking. A lot of our books are getting smaller, and
I mean, that's good advice for adult books too. I mean,
Dan was actually talking about adult books.
Oh, yeah,
They're getting,
yeah.
their word count is getting smaller, and so what used to be 70,000 words for nonfiction is now like 40 is typically where you'll see recommended. So my point is that yes. I also am like, my kids, they have cell phones.
Don't do what you
I'm
want.
just kidding.
Yeah.
I don't care. I will go home and be fine. But I think there is some. There's lots of validity to what you're saying, and the attention span. I don't know if I am around a strange samples of kids or something, but they're thriving, the ones, and so I don't know if it's because they're active, but they're like talking about philosophy, and I just meditate. Marcus Aurelius meditation. They're just constantly talking about things that are heady. And so I think I must be not exposed very well to all that's going on. I'm just speaking from a bias, I believe, likely. So I think the kids are gonna be okay. But I don't know. But our attention spans are getting smaller, and you can see that from the shrinking of our books, and the only way to, I think, we just continue to have the scientific researched. Your books are coming out all over the place on the dangers of social media and media in general, and the question will be, are we going to do anything? Because we have that power. So we're just going to keep being faithful and providing words and books.
more graphic novels is what I heard you say.
And look, it might not be. It might actually be more of akin to like Coca-Cola, right? In the sense of building a proper diet around it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I mean, cigarettes used to be okay in our culture, and now I think England is about to make it completely illegal, or it's on their agenda for politics. It doesn't matter. Anyways, and so this is, and culturally now that's not, it's more taboo. We don't, so I do think we go through these cultural, and I do hope that social media and our smartphones will be less invasive and less a part of our norm.
Asbestos of our times.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so I have a few more questions here. So somehow I draw pictures for a living, but I'm also a professor in the academy. And very few people on the street have a desire to want to publish in academic journals, right? But lots of people...
Except for the front row right here.
Hey, present company excluded. But lots of people long to write for children or want to do this in some form. So what advice would you give to someone who just has a great story or has always wanted to write a novel for young people? What advice would you give them? Where do they start?
Read.
Yeah.
I really do believe, I know that's so, everyone says that, but I really do believe that if you're reading, then you're going to write more effectively. It's better if you're reading yourself than, oh, I have an idea. Also, let me tell you, as someone who works in the industry, most people who have an idea, it never comes to fruition because they won't write it. I will have so many people tell me, hey, I really have this book idea. I want to write this whatever. And I'll say, okay, send me 1,000 words. I never see it because it's so hard to write. It takes so much time, and you're lonely and you're isolated, and never see it. So I also would ask them, is this really what you want to do? Or do you have a romanticized view of writing? So I would have a lot of words to say probably, but read would be one of them.
Yeah, and I double down on read because it helps you understand if you've accidentally come up with a most often pitched idea, right? And so sometimes you'll be like, oh, the littlest lawnmower who couldn't mow straight, and like they wouldn't let him play his lawnmower games. It's kind of taken. That one's taken. And so sometimes you gotta just know what's out there. What I mean, as with anything, like literature.
I heard an idea about a traffic cone once that fell over and was sad.
That's, for what it's worth, kind of awesome. We've moved into so bad it's good.
Well, actually, yes.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people have really good ideas. When I hear people's ideas, they're often good. And the thing I tell my students is you actually need more than a good idea. Even though people think all I need is a great idea, just like you said. But ideas are kind of cheap, and execution is the thing that sets you apart. So you've got to invest the time to make it, and for it to be bad, and for it to be like redone, and for someone to tell you that you kind of need to start over. And oftentimes that's where people are like, well, I was kind of in it for the idea, but so you just got to be in the game to struggle, to learn, and to try and iterate. Yeah.
And to be rejected and be okay. Yeah. I mean, Anne Lamott, she says, she has a phrase, I'm not going to say it because it's inappropriate, but write the...
Do you want to whisper in my ear? I'll say it.
Write the not so good first draft.
Right.
And so...
The crappy first draft.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I think that's also something that we have to be okay with, is we can't be so in love with ourselves and our own words that we aren't willing to be edited and to write the draft and know that it's not great, and to be rejected and go again. Like, okay, I'm learning, because it's a part of learning to write and your craft and building and learning. So.
And we're going to put Trillia's email on the screen so you can email her all of your... Oh, no, okay.
Send her 1,000 words on anything.
I will respond.
All right, well, we're coming to the end, but maybe as we sort of close, like as we think about what advice you would give the church, as we think about the next generation of young people and how we think about sharing stories for them, what advice might you have?
I'm not qualified to give advice to a church.
Yeah, okay,
For
all
literature?
right. Okay, I take your point. This was a bad question. Let me reframe.
Well, it's such a big question.
Yeah. I can narrow it down.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I think both of you are doing things in your work that, like, you're clearly writing from a point of view, right? And it's okay to have a particular point of view. And God has, like, called you to say not everything to everyone, but say this very specific thing. And how do we encourage people to sort of see that as a calling in writing, in making? Like, how do we empower them to do that today?
So we're actually talking to the writer, to the creator, to the person. Well, you're created in the image of God. I believe that He has gifted every single one of us. And so I think that one of the things that we can struggle with is to think that we aren't worthy or valuable, or what we have to say isn't worthy or valuable. But I believe that God has given you a voice for a reason. And I also think that if I can get theological, that we are called, every one of us, to go and make disciples of every nation. That's our calling, is to make disciples and to teach them to obey all that God has commanded. If you believe, then that is your calling. And so if you can trust Him in your work, that He has given you good works before the foundation of the world, Ephesians 2 tells us, and He's planned it, and He's equipped you, and He will continue to equip you. And so I would just say, go and speak, go and write, do it, exercise faith, and trust Him with the results.
That was really good. I'll clap for that. That was really good. I can't follow that up. I just want you to know that. I will say I have advice for the church. If you're leading worship, I can't keep up with you on some of those notes. Don't do that thing. Don't do the Whitney Houston thing. I don't like that. That makes it about you. And then I stand there and I'm like, the reason we've been singing this for 100 years is so we can all get here and know what we're about to do. And now you just wrecked it because you're doing this like little trebling voice, and I don't like that.
I agree with you. I live in Nashville.
Stop it.
And
yeah,
so everyone's a singer.
Yeah, they're all pentatonics and whatever. You quit it.
I agree.
Hit the notes, hit the normal notes, and then lay people can. I'm barely hanging on. I can't.
It's weird. I mean, this is our topic for next year's Carver Conversation. So.
No,
Thank you.
For what it's worth, you did nail it, and so I didn't have anything. There was nowhere to go with that. That was great.
Well, thank you. I hope you all have enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, one more time for our panelists. Thank you so much. I just want to close the night by thanking you for coming. My name is Brent Rome. I've had the great honor and privilege of being the board chair of the Carver Project for the last 6 years, for the entire existence of the Carver Project. And I'm thrilled and grateful to have served in this role. I'm also a pastor of One Family Church, one of the 13 churches that partner with the Carver Project. And we're just thrilled to be able to provide this kind of programming and the kind of services and programming that the Carver Project provides to students, to faculty, to churches, to pastors, to ministry leaders, and to people just like you. As we close, I just wanted to highlight a couple points from this session that you might want to take home with you. Just a couple points that I thought we should highlight. Most of these are direct quotes, a couple are paraphrased. If your children want a cell phone, give them cocaine instead. TikTok is the devil. Smartphones are the asbestos of our time. Why are comedians so bad at being Christians? Why are Christians so not funny? The whole time, friendship was the journey. Chesterton did it. My dad opened for Kool and the Gang. The library is America's greatest idea. Libraries are ad hoc babysitters. But I think the most important quote is, if you want to enter the kingdom of God, do it like a little child. Thank you so much for coming. We have a reception for you in the lobby. I would encourage you and invite you. Could you hand me that brochure, Kristen? There was the QR code to ask a question. There's a much more important QR code just to the right of that, and that is the Make a Donation to the Carver Project QR code. We would invite you to support the work that we do, partner with us. You could be a $100 donor, a $1,000 donor, a $10,000 donor, or a $100,000 donor. We will accept all of you and embrace all of you. So please take some time to consider supporting and partnering with us at the Carver Project. And I'll close us in prayer, and then we'll go have some snacks. Father, thank you so much for this time that we've had today. Thank you for these incredible panelists. Thank you for John Hendrix leading that discussion. Thank you for each and every person here who made it here safe and sound in the rain. And I just pray that you would keep us safe tonight as we head home. I pray that we would be encouraged and inspired and empowered by the words we heard tonight. I pray, Lord God, that everything that we've done and said here has brought honor and praise and glory to you. We love you, we honor you, and we praise you in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. God bless you. Have a great night.
I think I was just really encouraged by just the simple reminders in life. Simple things like, just reading more, reading every day, writing from the heart. And I think the call to our greatest, vocation, which is to go out into the world and make disciples. I think it's one of those that I feel like I needed to be reminded of because I could find ways in my own work to do that.
It was an honor to be here. I think that tonight and other nights like this are so exciting because we get to live out that verse that iron sharpens iron. And at the end of tonight, you just feel a little sharper.
we're having a baby in June, and so I'm starting to get interested in the topic a little bit more. And so, I just walked away with that I want to read more, and I want to encourage a culture of reading, I guess, in my family.
I was really interested to see what writers have to say about their perspective on how to engage with students, because I'm a middle school teacher and I engage with middle school students face to face every day, and some of them are going to be reading this book next year. So to bring the human element of, I heard this guy speak about what he's writing about. I think my students want things to feel as real as possible.
I mean, the gospel is the good news, right? We were talking about eucatastrophe, John brought up earlier, this beautiful turn of events that happens at the end of a story, and that's what I saw in how they talked about their books and their stories, that the things that are sad, here we go, make a plug for the book, everything sad is untrue, right? And that's not the end of the story, right? That the crucifixion happens, but that the resurrection will come. And I hope that all future children's book writers and illustrators will, at least in the Christian world, speak that message and bleed it out into the world.